Hello and welcome to another episode of What's Inside. Today we are looking at a Rolaids product. This is from the Demon line from Mayfair Games. This is Apocalypse. This was compatible with Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, first edition and second edition really. And they had this whole line called Demons, where it was like angels and demons duking it out. But this is the Apocalypse box set. They had a Celestials box, and they had a whole bunch of demon supplements. I have a couple of those things kicking around. We'll look at those. Some of the Rolaids stuff was actually pretty good. It was very underrated because it was considered to be, since it was third party, it was considered to be knockoff D&D. But it actually had a lot of stuff in here that during the moral panic of the Dungeons and Dragons era of the 80s, a lot of stuff that was in these box sets got attributed to TSR because you had all the angels and demons, and it created a lot of controversy for them. But it actually helped sales, so they didn't complain a lot. So Mayfair Games actually was one of the better producers of off-product stuff. So getting some of these and tracking them down might be pretty interesting because you can really change it up. Like, oh, your players know too much about the Forgotten Realms. Well, get the Mayfair ones and get the Elf book and the Dwarf book and some of the others, and we'll play those because most people nowadays have no clue about those products. And they had some undead and stuff like that. They had some modules as well. But the demons one was their effort at creating a campaign setting, I guess, is the closest I could call it. But it also was to stir controversy and cash in on that. But this one is Apocalypse. It includes the Apocalypse Game Master's book, containing extensive details on all manner of apocalypses and how to incorporate them into your campaign, from the simple ending of an era to the complete and utter destruction of the world. Then there's Tumult and Tribulation, a massive adventure describing all the details of an apocalypse which you can end your campaign world with or run as a separate apocalyptic campaign. And dozens of detailed maps, pre-generated characters and NPCs for your characters to encounter in their climactic battle. This is from 1993, so this is one of the later ones. But yeah, the moral panic of the 80s and 90s was really huge. Thanks to like Paula Paulding and her book The Devil's Web, it really solidified the reign of TSR in the mid 80s all the way through until their untimely demise from overproducing. So yeah, this is definitely a relic of history, and this one is sealed. I'm going to open it, and we're going to make everybody else's copy that much more valuable. Now these tend to go for at least $30 from what I've seen. So this is actually going to be an expensive open for a vintage product. Probably not the most expensive we will end up doing though. But it'll definitely be an interesting one. Like I said, I liked a lot of the Rolaids stuff. I thought it was very useful for putting against players that knew a little too much about the standard D&D stuff. And if you want to throw them off, be like, we're using these. And even back then, it wasn't a huge successful line. It was always solid, but it wasn't ever a competition for TSR. So it was always around, and you'll still see a lot of the stuff around in bargain bins from really old stores or used bookstores. So if you see them, pick them up, give them a shot. Some of them are pretty good. Alright, so here's our Apocalypse Game Master's book. It's just a fold over with staples in it. And it's got some interesting artwork here. So very simplistic design, reminiscent of White Wolf with the marbling. Oh, this has a new smell too. It sealed that flavor in. So yeah, the artwork isn't bad. It's got like these wood cuts on the side. It's not a complicated design, and it makes it look a little cheap, but I always found these to be fairly interesting to at least give me good ideas with. Maybe their book wasn't the best, but it sparked something in my brain that would let me come up with something of my own. And like I said, they're a great source material for when you're stuck or you want to run a campaign without doing all the work yourself. Alright, so here's the... this one doesn't have... this is just a photocopy paper quality. This one actually is glossier with a thicker cover. So this one's a little lower end. It actually looks a lot cheaper because it kind of is. But the paper is the same as what's inside the other book. It just doesn't have a fancy cover. And it's 60 some pages. It's almost 70. And it's got all the stats and everything that you need. The artwork is pretty cool. It's solid artwork. I'll give them credit for that. I actually think some of the artwork in these were better than some of the later D&D ones. So some of it's not quite as good, but it's definitely not the worst that you'll see in gaming products, that's for sure. So that's a nice thick book. Look at that, 70 pages. Then we've got the rest of our stuff here. Here we've got a advertisement. This is for the Demons line. There's Demons, Demons 2. Those were box sets, I believe. And then the Denizen books were supplementary books, more like module format. And here's the front, Abandon All Hope. And it says Rolaids, and that's a real interesting painting. That's by Glenn Fabry. So it actually looks like a painting. So this is actually, glossy. It says that it's compatible with Dungeons & Dragons, or Advanced Dungeons & Dragons. Then what do we got here? We got some maps. These are on more like resume paper. So there's a valley map. Can't read what that is because it's upside down. Then we've got a Polania map. So you get quite a bit of material here. This really is kind of a campaign setting. Then there's a Chronomancer's Tower. Nice and detailed. Great for GMs, especially new people. Then we've got an Astra's House. Obviously a character from the game. Then we've got some two-sided sheets. These are a little thin in my opinion, but definitely not the worst I've ever seen. So we got some stats there. Superior Flangelis. High-level priest. Character art, little description. Kind of a waste of space, but they were definitely filling it in. So lots of typing on the other side. It is kind of cool that they have character portraits for the NPCs. So these are obviously all just either people you can play or people you're going to meet in the game if you follow the adventure. So yeah, there's a lot here. There's a lot of pages to this. This one's just full art on one side. Like, she's got a lot more text than that guy. She's much more interesting. Then we've got this, which is a handout, blank on one side. We've got some character portraits here. These are probably NPCs. Or more NPCs. Probably non-playables. The others might have been playable. There's some more character portraits. Turn these. The character portraits, the art's a little hit and miss on a lot of these. These people look like they have, some sort of developmental disability. Whereas I like this one a little bit better. That one's not as good, but this one's pretty good. We've got a queen here, and we've got some like chubby looking elf. Hopefully these are coming out okay on the screen. I can't really tell by the lighting there. The screen on the camera is pretty small, so. But yeah, there's a whole lot of NPCs in here. Like, this is a pretty healthy little stack of paper. I mean, and they did a lot of art for this, which is really cool because you don't see this kind of intensity anymore. I mean, creating this much size character portrait, they don't do that on handouts anymore. They just have little tiny pictures in a book. They don't do these box sets anymore, too, you know, very rarely anyway. So it's nice to see these, and I haven't actually opened one of these in a very long time, so brings me back. But older players probably remember these, and everybody had an opinion on them. I know there were a lot of people that didn't play with Rolade stuff, but they were usually a lot cheaper than D&D products, and they went on sale more because they weren't considered to be canon, so people didn't want to play them. They wanted the official stuff. But I always found them to be pretty useful. There were a couple that weren't very good, but there were some that were real good. And you can still find a lot of the modules and stuff. Like I said, you can find them used, and they're usually fairly cheap compared to the D&D ones. So I'd recommend checking them out if you see them at a bookstore or something. But so you know what you should have in this box set is why I'm showing you these. Because you'll want it to be as complete as possible. And there are a lot of pages here to compare with what you're buying. So, yeah, but that's it for those. So that's all the handouts and maps. Not a lot of maps, but quite a few NPCs to work with there, and I think some characters. So yeah, this is definitely, I think, a really good resource if you want to run an apocalypse in your campaign. It would definitely be worth looking into, so you don't have to do all the work of drawing it up yourself and hitting a bunch of reference material. You could be looking at theological books for 5-6 years trying to come up with a good apocalypse scenario. So this might be a good alternative. And like I said, these go for about $30. I think originally they were $20 when they first came out, but that was more than 20 years ago. So adjusted for inflation, they've probably come down in price. But that is Rolade's Apocalypse, part of the Demons product line. Fully compatible with Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, and probably a second edition D&D. It might take some conversion for the stats to adjust to later editions. As a matter of fact, I know it would. But this is product number 764 from Mayfair Games, Rolades line. Like I said, I recommend checking them out. I think it would be worth it. Mayfair Games still does some pretty decent stuff, and something like this could be really useful in a D&D campaign or any other fantasy campaign, honestly. It could save you a lot of time and work, and it might be interesting to actually play this out. So if you've got some old D&D rules sitting around, I'm a huge second edition guy. So I have 5th edition, but 4th really never did it for me. And 3rd I kind of hated, honestly, because I knew way too many power gamers, and that's who I ended up playing with. So yeah, overall, I like this box set. I think it could be incredibly useful for some big epic campaign, or just running his own campaign. So I highly recommend checking it out, tracking it down if you get a chance. If you're a big RPG guy or girl, then definitely look into it. But that'll do it for this episode. Thank you so much for watching and supporting the channel, and we hope to see you on the next episode of What's Inside.